All right, here we made it.
We have
What's up,
officially
man?
made it.
This is the first episode of
Yep.
the new Oh Yeah Dig It podcast show.
Yep.
With
And
Danny Apple and me, Jay Gregory.
yeah, man.
And it's taken a little bit to get to this road, but we're glad we're here.
Dude,
We got
what a wild ride. What a
a
wild
ride.
ride.
Been a ride for sure.
I really can't quite place it. How like the difficulty for us to even just get to this point was like us trying to climb Mount Everest or some shit like that.
Right? It really was. I mean, we don't know everything about this podcast stuff. We both kind of are doing our things,
Mhm.
both in the podcast world and with other things, but it's still a learning lesson. It's
Yes.
still, each time we get together, we're like, there's one hiccup, and then it's like, okay, so next time. So it's like almost having like a playbook from previous stuff and trying to bring it to everybody. And we think we might have a good fit this time. So we're going to see how it goes.
Yep.
And it's going to be exciting.
I'm thoroughly excited. I'm really excited. So, the actual topic today is, especially with now this new beginning and how everything's going, it's basically just how did we get to this point? You and I, we went to high school together, and we also lived in the same neighborhood. So that we knew each other for quite a long time. So
For those who don't know, that may continue to listen from the previous incarnation of Yeah Dig It, I'm originally from Maryland, as is Danny.
yep.
That's how we met. Go ahead, Danny. Proceed, because
Long Reach High. We went to Long Reach, graduated. Lightning.
Did you
So-
go to Howard?
I
The
went
first
to
two-
Howard. I went to Howard for the first 2 years.
So did I.
Yeah. And then the last 2 years for 11th and 12th grade, I went to Long Reach when they redistricted us.
That's right.
So-
That's right.
And that was some crazy stuff. I didn't. I mean, at first I kind of was like, why am I switching schools and all this other stuff? And then I realized, once we finally did get out of Howard, how dimly lit all the hallways were, and
We had like better everything because it was a
we
brand
had
new.
like better everything there. I mean, like our school lunches were better.
We had
Or-
CNC machines. We're like, what? They
yeah.
left their hats. Like, that was a great time. The great time,
Mhm.
And it was really nice because, as you and I know, we were infused into what became a very small school the first couple years.
Yeah, we
And
were.
the first graduating class. There may be people who don't care or don't know, but for Danny and I, we were the first graduating class of our high school. And so
1998. First,
It kinda
first
stands-
graduation.
that's right,
And,
1998. And, so the crazy thing of it is that's where the seeds were planted for a lot of things, because Danny and I didn't share a lot of classes, but one class we kind of were in a lot was art class, and probably a couple of English classes here and there.
Mhm.
So the thing is, while at the time we may not have been like socially connected, but we knew each other very well and our work very well at that time. And that's kind
Yeah,
of like what
we didn't have the same clicks, so to speak.
yeah, the same thing. The funny thing is, though, I feel like for me, anyways, I didn't really. I always tell my son this. My son, trying a little personal thing. My son struggles a little bit with social stuff, and I say to him all the time. I say, look, you're caring about being popular, and the first couple years, the first 2 years at the one school, I tried so hard to be cool or popular, and when I stopped caring, was when I was brought into this new school where nobody really had a clique yet because it was so new. Everybody was brought in from there, and we all clicked like the first couple of years. It was just kind of like you could get along with everybody because nobody was established in anything really. I mean, you had your what do you call them? Like, yeah, you had the jocks and and you had your weird art kids and then just like the band kids and all that. But the thing was, personality wise, nobody judged anybody because nobody knew anybody unless you had
No.
already gone. But
Yeah.
it was
I know for my personal opinion, it was I was basically with like a lot of the sci-fi geeks, a lot of I had my own peeps, my own Clan McLeod, so to speak, my Highlander fan club, I guess is what you want to call it. But we were, like you said previously, we weren't in a lot of different classes together, but we did have some. And you were a tremendous artist, enough so that you drew on our high school yearbook, man. And that. Looking at what you did there was very impressive.
Oh, thank you, thank you. I try to get back to some of that. It's hard, um, you know, styles and all that. And then see, that's the cool thing about this is that was like even an evolution in my art then because the positive reinforcement I was getting from this new vibe of not having to care about social norms or whatever, and just new beginning. It was like everything was a new beginning.
Mm-hmm.
And if you adopted that mindset, I think most of us did very well. Like if we went down that lane of like, because there were some people who, like they went to Howard and they were districted for Long Reach and like they hated it. They wanted to be Howard Lions for life, all these things, or wherever they came from, Oakland
Yeah.
Mill, other schools. But if you adopted the change, you kind of really did a lot better, I feel like, because you made it your own and it became your own.
Yeah.
And it's funny because when you look back at history and our history, we have taken that seed and it's like, here we are. We turned it into something that's our own from the seeds being planted there to life now.
Do you remember the first time I came up to you in regards to like the first time we haven't even Dark Charm was not even a concept yet. I had my problem was I was fired after 8 years on a job at Terminex, and I started just getting into writing again, just because I always was writing, but I never finished anything. And it was like, it got to the point where it was kind of like frustrating. And I started writing and writing and writing and writing, and finally actually finished something. And a mutual friend of ours, Brian Kelly, he goes, hey, if you're going to write something, maybe you should get, someone to draw some stuff for you. I was like, why don't you get in touch with Justin Lentz? And I was like, okay. So.
No, I remember the Avenging Storm, right?
Yeah, it was for Avenging Storm. And it was a Elseworlds type scenario of what happened during Zero Hour, but if Zero Hour literally encompassed both the Marvel and the DC universe, and a new character came out of that, where it was fairly interesting. I love to see at some point in time where that would really go. Problem is the copyright issues would kill me.
Property rights and everything.
Yeah.
And see that I think that's where really that's the nexus of Dark Charm, because the funny thing about that story there too is when you got in touch with me, it was kind of how you reach out to me, and then it's like Brian Kelly reaches out to me. He's like, hey, I let Danny Atwell know that you do. And I'm like, that's fine, that's cool. Haven't talked to Danny in a while. That's great. Whatever. Got in touch with you. We started touching base. And I'm like, yeah, just send me the story. And I'm thinking to myself, yeah, Danny loves comic book. I always knew that's the one thing that kind of connected us, even though we weren't connected socially, was we had a love for comic books. That's people don't know. I'm telling the story now, but like the art classes and the English classes, I don't know if you remember though, because I do. we always kind of did stick together in that though, like in groups or whatever, like group writing or like art projects or even just like sitting near each other because we had the love for the comic books. And that's
Yep.
what I think we both in high school anyways, before like life came out, post high school, we thought that's what we're going to do. We're going to do comic books.
Mm-hmm.
But it was never like we were like, we're going to do comic books together or even stories together. We just both knew we loved it. And that's what we're going to do. But the thing is, when you send me that Avenging Storm, I'm like, yeah, cool. Like he's sending me this comic book, whatever. Then I get the file and it's like 476 pages. So I'm like, God damn, what? I'm like, this is a novel. I was like, I wasn't prepared for a novel. And I'm reading it, and it kind of was, for me, it was a different situation because I'm reading it, but at the same time, I have to like take some of my mind and like conceptualize graphic and visual stuff for this, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I do that like kind of cover, which I still want to finish that cover, which I thought why I said wow earlier because you said, but I was never finishing anything because there's where we also are so close and alike is I do a lot of stuff I just don't finish.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm tired of it too. But we're on a different path now. Jump forward though. I'm like, okay, so I'm gonna he sent me a novel. All right. I'm gonna do my best to read everything I can because I'm also trying to work on doing the concepts and the visuals.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's where for me I was like, you know what? Like this is like we even said it to each other a couple times, like, yeah, no, it's a great story, but like just how realistic is it? The property rights, like because it was kind of some characters in there that. And then I don't remember who said it, but it was like, why don't we just do our own thing?
Yeah. What happened was you said to me as payment, because originally, like, I couldn't pay you for the drawings and stuff. You asked me, it's like, could you write me a story? And it was you had something about fate bringing two people together, and I just had this thought in my head, and I'm like, huh. So I started writing what eventually would become probably our cornerstone of our Dark Charm universe, which was Unforgettable Fire, and it's not even out yet, but it's relatively done. And you started reading some of the chapters, and you were like, "Wow, this is some good stuff."
Right.
So,
right. I mean, it was easy, and I'm going to be honest for the listeners and for you too. Like, it was easier for me to latch onto that than the Avenging Storm, just mm-hmm. because it was like, dude, we just created these characters, mm-hmm. and now I think true comic fans, they get immersed in the story so much so, and even the ones who create their own comics and stories, the beautiful thing is you become part of that universe, mm-hmm. like. You are one of the characters in that story. And of course, as we will find out, you and I are
characters of another sort.
Yeah, man. We have to be in it.
Of course. And it was the craziest concept too, but we'll get to that in a minute. So we finally finish Unforgettable Fire. It's going through its last edits and things like that. You start doing some of the drawings for it. And I just get, like, all of a sudden, I, like, have this explosive, like, I wouldn't say epiphany, but it was like, you know what? What if we did our own stuff? What if we did our own universe? What if we, came up with these different concepts? And I came up with a score to settle. You and I collaborated on like the story plot for Fascination Street, which is still I trying to write a lot of Fascination Street is like totally mind-boggling because of how we sort of interwove everything through it.
Right. Like Fascination Street is like our inception of our universe.
Pretty much. So, and just, we started to like, Night Child, Branded by Blood. And all these different like titles come out, and I'm like writing issue after issue after issue, and you're like, I can't keep up, dude. You need to stop.
Dude, so bad. I mean, for me, the struggle, because being a creative person, as you know, I have, for me at least, 1,000,001 ideas and 10,000 visuals inside my head. And I'll be honest with you guys, you know, my wife is like, it drives her nuts. Like she doesn't hate hearing my ideas. She just is like, babe, like which one? What is it? What's it going to be? Which one are you going to hit with? Because like she hears it all. And I bet that's overwhelming. But like it was like, damn, Danny's producing. He's producing. And of course, I'm always proud of everything you're putting out. And I'm telling you, the honesty is, and the listeners might be like, what? I'm one of the creators, but I haven't even been able to read every single thing yet because I'm still in this world of like, and Danny knows that I have other like art project things that I do. So my time wasn't always just to Dark Charm, you know? And it's so, it's like, but then I'm also like, yeah, but see, I got these hidden treasures because I got to go back and read these things. And then it kind of, when I get the opportunity to like read some of the older stuff again and all that, you know, where we're at today, which we'll be talking about, the visuals spark again. And it's like, okay, so, but it's, I remember that even what I'm thinking now is different than what I was thinking then.
Yeah.
And what's crazy is that's kind of how the universe is. So
yeah, even if you like take time off from it, when you start to go back into it, you sort of get the same feel, but you also get like a different perspective because your life is already gone forward. Right. And, you know, your new experiences enhance what you've just read, or you find stuff that you didn't pick up originally before, and then you're all of a sudden you're finding new facets you never could possibly dream and stuff you just read. So, or just stuff that you've drawn, or I mean, it's, for me especially, looking back on Unforgettable Fire in general, it was a while. I mean, like I had to do like some last minute edits and, you know, to get certain things up to speed. I had to go through a vigorous re-editing of what I originally wrote because I found out that after I was done college that there was a lot of grammatical mistakes that I had been making throughout my entire writing. So I literally had to go back and revise all those things, pick up all those, because I found my and this is one thing that like my professors were telling me, is that I had a tendency to jump between tenses, past and present tenses while I was writing. And for some things that's okay, but for, you know, what I was doing, that wasn't good.
I'll be honest too, like, the visual artist, it's like I could read into that a little bit, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So that's where some like people don't realize, who don't do what we're trying to do or what we do, is that sometimes becomes an obstacle because you're like, wait, am I putting this visually in a post or present? You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Or yeah. Past tense, present tense. There was a little confusion there, but proceed.
So once I started like getting a huge amount of material under my belt, the big goal originally was to get more than one artist. You were overwhelmed. I couldn't stop. I mean, I'm like at this point where like I cannot stop writing. I find myself sometimes if I write myself into a hole or into a corner, I have to back out, rewrite again, and get back to where I feel the fluidness, where I feel the comfort in a story plot. If I find like in my gut feeling that something ain't working right, I'm like, I'll sit on it for a little bit, go and work on something else. But then I found out, you know, by doing that, I'm like, okay, now I've realized this part is not where I wanted to go. We cut it out entirely, rewrite it this way. So I'm kind of glad that I sort of have that mentality with that. But you took some time off from Dark Charm because it was to the point where you just couldn't, with all the stuff going on in your life, your brand new baby being born. At the time, it was a brand new baby being born. You couldn't put as much effort as you wanted to into the actual company. So for a while, it was just me holding the reins to get everything. I mean, it wasn't that I couldn't come to you and like bounce ideas off you or anything, because that was still, that was still an option. But just to make sure that everything was copacetic with the actual writing and everything, and then still trying to come up with like different people to come in, and like not a lot of people wanted to actually work for nothing at this point.
Right.
And that was the tough part.
But at the same time, it's like you can't even sell people on like we're building this together.
Mm-hmm. They didn't want to hear it, and it was okay that people need to. And Dark Charm for me, even though it felt like I was doing full-time work, it was technically a part-time job. I was going to school. I was still working. I found a new job at Department of Social Services, and I'm still working there now, but it was just enough that I started writing where I honestly, it's just I couldn't stop. I actually finished the story plot for A Score to Settle, 1 through 10. That's done, and I have not gone back to do anything more with that, and I don't plan to just yet. That's going to be further down the road. So the original thought was, okay, we need to get artists together, and I'm not a bad artist. So I started drawing stuff myself just to get things started. And I focused mainly on A Score to Settle because that was a lot easier for me to draw in regards to other titles. Now, the one title I wished, honest to God, would have worked out more would have been Night Child. And we had a guy who was originally doing Night Child. But I don't know if there was like a disagreement of differences, but he just stopped doing much of anything. He had his own life. He was doing his own thing. And he was just like, I'm out. I'm done. And we were like, no warning, no nothing. I mean, like you've already done like at least 8 full pages of painted work. And now you're just like, you're done with it? So I don't know what happened after that. I lost contact with him. There was another guy that I'd worked with. He sort of saw into the dream, the idea of doing this, but he was in an instance where his goal to getting stuff done, his drive to do what to get the work done was better than a lot of his different skill. A lot of people like the scratchy look for Branded by Blood, but it obviously wasn't, like I wanted a little bit more of a clear, like a crisper detail than what he gave. And that was okay. I mean, it's his style, and I had my own that I dealt with trying to do it.
I have like 8 pages done of that, right?
Of Branded by Blood?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I need to jump back on it.
If you want, I mean, look, at this point, it's a novel now. It's no point in
well, there's a story for
okay, yeah. So back into this. So we got to the point where we were like, out of shits and giggles, I was like, what if we had a dark comedy type comic, or like drawn like, if we did it like normalized, it'd be cool, but like do it like a sort of a comedic sense. And the the idea is about two guys from Baltimore who go up to New England and become undertakers.
Going up to
Brave
wish.
Yeah, and so that Fun with Dirt was born from that, and it was like, well, who do we use as the models for these two guys? And you were like, let's use us.
Right. Because it was like, it's a Laurel and Hardy-esque, but like darker version.
Yeah.
And it made sense to me. And, the whole point of Dark Charm is taking a universe and having it be the darker aspect of that fantasy world of comic books, superheroes, and things like that.
Yeah.
We don't intend to mimic or convey anything that DC or Marvel does. Now, I will say DC is a little darker than Marvel, in my opinion, aside from your Marvel Knights series. But this is the universe. This isn't like Marvel had to do a Knight series to be like, this is our dark portion. DC has Batman, and then Batman to me is almost in his own universe aside from DC, because he's the darkest character they have.
Yeah.
Thematically and supporting characters. Our whole universe is dark.
Mm-hmm. And before we even started anything, we were talking about what we wanted to do, and the biggest thing was we wanted to make an adult universe, not like overtly sexual, but very, not for children, because this type of material is not very prevalent in our comics. A lot of the the major stuff is like for kids, but there's also a lot of fans who wondered what it would have been like if their comics would have grown up with them. And that was what became the mantra of Dark Charm. What if your comics grew up with you?
Right.
So
it's a great tagline too, by the way.
Yeah.
I'm gonna start doing hashtag what if your comics grew up with you.
Yep. Perfect.
Make it happen. And to that point, I mean, there's the dream and there's the reality, and both in our universe and then in our own real lives, things happened. Time had went by. I was doing Oh Yeah Dig It podcast show on my own, and it still is going to be a pop culture thematic,
of course,
podcast. But I have the best co-host in the world alongside me this time, so it's going to be that much more exciting. Why I'm saying is because we still are going to also be talking and kind of promoting, so cheap plug if you want to call it that, but our universe, our Dark Charm product, because we have also now, and this is kind of one of the points of Dark Charm, is the comic book dream and all these things. It may not be the reality right now. So we said, Danny and I got together again, and we have a small team of people with us this time. And the movement is, let's get this out in any possible conceivable way that we can as a product, which I think we both agree is we're reconverting things back into novel form.
Yeah.
And then so we can, I guess, sell or promote whatever through whatever channels. And Danny has the final word on that, because at the end of the day, I'm kind of a visual creative liaison to his story writing. Like, he has, I don't know what to think of, like he said, bouncing the ideas off. But this is Danny's baby, and we need to get some kind of product out there. And so hopefully that brings in more exposure and a little bit of income so we can then go back to the dream and pay an artist, so to speak, or another writer or whatever the cause may be, to facilitate the comic book side of things.
Yep. The number one goal was always to get more exposure. And when you and I originally was bouncing around what type of name we wanted to do, you came up with the idea of calling it Dark Charm Media. That was probably the most ingenious thing ever, because if we would have called ourselves Dark Charm Comics, it would have probably been just we would have been like pigeonholed for that.
Well, what did we call it originally?
Onyx Dark Entertainment. That was the first name.
That's like us saying like dark. It's dark.
It's totally dark entertainment. But the problem was, like, we were looking it up, and someone had already apparently had that name, but it was like black gay porn.
That's what it was. It was like we were like, it was like the record scratch that day we discovered that. But
I'm like, dude, we can't call ourselves ODE now. And he's like, why? What's up? Check out this website. And you looked at it and you were like, oh my God.
When I first came up with it, I said, oh, wait a minute. I said, this sounds cool. It's a play on black and dark and this and that. And you're like, yeah. And at that time, I think we weren't really like too like sold on a name. We just were like, well, we need to have something to throw on it, for now. But I do remember you like distinctly got in touch with me one day and you're like, dude. And I'm like, what? You're like, there's an Onyx Dark. I'm like, okay, he's like, no, look at, and it was like record scratch. It was like, Skrr! Like, no, we are totally not calling ourselves that. I was like, sorry,
yeah, that would have been just insane. So we were like, okay, well, we want to be dark, and we're both from Baltimore, so let's do Charm, Dark Charm Media, or Dark Charm Comics. And we're like, well, media will keep us open to doing other things, and it turns out, especially as of late,
we didn't know that at the time. That's the crazy thing.
No,
we're just like Dark Charm Media, because it sounds good, and what we knew was this: it was open, like it was media to us at that time. Now, just to give our listeners a better timeline, we've been doing this, and I call it a project because eventually it's going to emanate into something we're going to have something of fruition. We're going to have product. Mm-hmm. And we've been doing this 6+ years now.
Yeah,
but
6+.
We don't have product yet. We will very soon. But to me, it's actually been a greater thing because having the name media in our company name has opened the door to all these other things, which I'll say it, like 6 years ago, we didn't even know about podcasts then. We didn't know about content media. Like, it wasn't important, You had social media, but a lot of them were still kind of young. And it was just kind of like people were doing their thing. Let's post a video. I like this. Here's a meme, But now it's like there's so much. And it's exciting because we're Dark Charm Media. Like, Danny writes stories. I have friends who mess with film and stuff. I can make like short films of our stories.
Yeah.
And it's not beyond the realm of like possibility or financially, because there are some people within all of those communities who like, they just want to make stuff for, because they care more about the exposure right now than pay me. And I think that's a beautiful thing. It's been a slow ride for us, but we are starting to find, because I think a lot of these artists that we try to make contact with, I think a lot of these artists that were not even up and coming, but they were us, but they had an air of, I'm better than that. You pay me. But I'm telling you now, a lot of them I bet are like, I just want to I want to get something out there. And it starts this way.
Mm-hmm. And, especially gravitating towards things where we don't necessarily have to worry about like an artist or anything like that. I mean, I didn't think within 6 years that we would be doing radio shows. I didn't think we were doing podcasts. I mean, like it's definitely broadening the horizon, but it's getting our universe out there.
Right.
And I can't be more excited than I am right now, just to like doing these other stuff. Cause like I'm doing, like I said, I'm not the head producer of Dark Charm Presents, which is the radio show that's under Dan McCloskey. He's taking the reins from that. He's if our listeners would know, he's actually the gatekeeper behind the podcast called A Gate Beyond. He's doing his thing there. A lot of my short stories were featured on A Gate Beyond, where we were sort of like testing the waters about how my material would go out to an audience. And a lot of his main, like his highly rated podcasts were all my stories. So he knew ahead of time what he wanted to do, and he came up to me with that concept, and he's like, "Look, I still want to do A Gate Beyond," and I was like, "I got no problem with you doing that." He goes, "But I want to use A Gate Beyond as sort of like a proving ground for Dark Charm," and I said, "Heck yeah!" I mean, I got no problem with that. I mean, as of this point, like, I don't think there's going to be really any more of my stories on A Gate Beyond, but now there's a partnership between that organization and us. Exactly. So by the time December rolls around, that first episode is going to be ready. We're in the middle of finishing up the last edit of the script, but then we just got to do the, bring the people in to record and add our, special, like special effects and things like that. And then boom, it's done. But I don't plan on having that as like an every month thing, maybe an every 2 months thing, depending on the story plot, who we can get to perform. It's going to be tough to get everything settled in there, but I think it's going to be worthwhile because when you got a radio script, it's not very hard to go from there to do a visual script.
Right. So. Right. And that's the beautiful thing about, or I don't know, beautiful thing. It's more like enlightenment. Like you and I, about a month ago, both like on the phone call, very same moment, we're like, dude, we call this thing Dark Charm Media, and like, oh my gosh, like there's so much things we can do. And
yeah, I remember that phone call vividly.
It was an epiphany for both of us. We were like, and that's when you were like, that's the most genius thing we've done. Let's call it Dark Charm Media at this point.
No, the first thing I told you was after you told me that you were no longer with the other company for You Dig It. I was like, just come home. Just come home. He's like,
coming home.
Yeah, just come home. And you're like, yeah, this is it. Like, why can't I do this for Dark Charm?
And here we are.
Here we are. I mean, it took a little bit, like, because we're trying to still figure out all the logistics and everything. A lot of this right now is being done through Skype, which God bless Skype. Because, you live now in Cincinnati. I live in Laurel. Which is a suburb close to D.C. But yeah, I mean, in order for us to do this in a proper manner, we had to take risks. And this, I mean, like the whole thing has been the hugest risk just to get everything rolling. But I tell you, one thing that I've been very excited about, especially, is like, you're starting to get more material back out there. To do like, other stuff for, like finishing up the illustration parts for a Unforgettable Fire. I bounce stuff off the creative team almost, it seems like, every week. But can we take Yeah, we can take one.
Your co-host has to go to the bathroom.
Okay. Well, we'll stop recording at the moment and then come back with the next. This is our commercial break. Yeah, this will probably be from like Wild Bill's beef jerky or something. I'll come up with something. Wild Bill's available in regular hickory smoke, teriyaki, peppered, and their big old motto: "You don't need teeth to enjoy our beef."
No, you don't. You got the yums.
Yep, pretty much. So, what we were talking about was us, you finally coming back into the fold, and then all of the stuff that we've sort of been planning from there. It all bases now on just timing, bunch of other different things. I mean, if you want to go in a little bit more in depth about what happened with your previous company, that's, like I said, it's totally up to you. If not,
well, I'll share a quick, just a little quick story.
Mm-hmm.
I was previously, and we're talking about my podcast, the Oh Yeah Dig It podcast show, was previously on a network called the Magic Squirrel Network, based here in Cincinnati. Little small outfit of a bunch of series of podcasts and YouTube shows, and they do really well. They're really good people. There was I was brought on through a friend of mine here who was like, "Hey, I know this guy has a network," and the guy was like, "Oh yeah, let's put him on there," because he wanted more content on his network. Mm-hmm. Understandable. I would say maybe I got a small fan base through them as well, and that was nice. But somewhere along the way, there was a miscommunication of roles. And in my humblest opinion, I wasn't sure at the time where the guy was coming from. I worded some things that I probably shouldn't have worded them the way I did initially. After some thought, I said, I apologize to him for wording things the way I did, but he invited me back to the network after booting me, and I said, it's kind of like just an end of a chapter. So I thought, well, I'm going to move on, and here I am on the Dark Charm Network.
Dark Charm Media Network. Dark Charm
Network.
Yeah, man.
It's going to grow.
Where do you see us going from here? Not just the Oh Yeah Dig It podcast, but the company in general.
Sure. Well, the thing is this. I think when you first start anything, there's initial excitement and like, oh, you kind of have like a plethora of ideas. A plethora of ideas.
How do you know what it means to have a plethora if you don't know what it means to have a plethora?
It's like,
see, that's the other thing why we have good chemistry. We like crazy movies, we sort of know where we're going to go with certain things. So
right, exactly, and we'll be talking about some of those movies on the Oh Yeah Dig It podcast show.
Oh yeah. Oh wait, sorry, that's you. I'm supposed to be the American Dream, Dusty Rhodes.
I'm just the son of a plumber.
I'm a son of a plumber. Sometimes I gotta get my ass whipped by the 4 horsemen, but that's okay.
Sour, funky like a monkey. Okay, back to reality. No, with Dark Charm Media, my goal is to, take a step back from the mental excitement of pushing ideas. We have a lot of content in terms of written form, we have a little bit of visual stuff. Me being the visual guy, my goal now is to basically take what we've already established visually and enhance it. Meaning, over the years, my style has changed. I've learned a lot more just in doing some of the things I do. Here's the other thing too. I would just put out there for our fans and listeners and whoever else may be taking part in this podcast. I always wanted to be a comic book artist from the time I was small till a couple years ago. A lot of that had to do with being told I should be a comic book artist from the time I was small till a couple years ago. What I found out was I am not a comic book artist.
Yeah, it's tough to do sequential art like that.
And it hurts me to a degree because a lot of what I'm trying to do is for Danny, because he's worked so hard in making this universe in a written format. Okay, like it's there. So we need visuals, right? Even putting my own demons aside, beating myself up, even just going gung ho balls to the wall and like just pushing pages out, I realized I'm not a sequential artist. And I was able to, I don't want to say finally convince Danny, but Danny finally realized as well, he's just, he's not a sequential artist, and you can't get we have an idea, because haven't we had people who do like anime and manga be like, oh, I'll do your comics, but like that's not really, we love anime and manga to a degree as an art form. It's just not the right art form for Dark Charm, in our opinion. And that's not putting, like, I'm a never say never guy. You might have a title down the line or somewhere where like that kind of maybe fits in. I'll always leave room for the idea that something could fit in somewhere. Just, I think we both agree right now, we're not there yet with that.
Nah, not there yet with that.
To that degree, though, what we discovered is I am kind of what's called a poster cover artist. I can do the one shots. I do the splash pages. That's where my my strength is,
Concept pages, things like that.
And I can conceptualize, and I can make like elemental things for the universe, and I can make figures, like I can create the characters and concept, like draw them up and say, hey, like this is what he's going to look like. So if we ever get like another artist say, well, this is kind of the basis, here you go. So that, with that being said, that gives us a lot more freedom to move forward, because we know where the strengths are. Okay, we know on both sides. Dark Charm Media, we didn't, like I said earlier, we didn't know about podcasts when we first started this, and now we do. And so it's one way to get content out of our product. We're saying we don't have product, but guess what? We kind of actually do, because Dark Charm Media presents, and then any story that we decide to share with you guys, whatever we talk about, there's going to be some shameless plugging for all things that are me and Danny's creations, and even the Chop Shop, his other podcast he does, on the Oh Yeah Dig It podcast show, because it's part of Dark Charm Media, because we're trying to build something. And we've both agreed that as long as we agree to work together on this thing, it's not really about how long it takes,
It's just getting there.
It's just getting there. Like we're just doing it. And we don't even have lofty goals. Like, it's not like we want to be the best in the world in terms, and I don't mean that against our own, styles and our own work that we've done. We want a quality product. And at some point we want enough exposure to get on a level where we can share it in some kind of a venue, whether that's a comic convention or, we, like I said, we say, it's funny, we have this universe and we have an opportunity to turn it into, a TV series, or we have an opportunity to turn it into a movie, or, even if it starts out as an indie film, or hell, maybe we make a cartoon out of it. I don't know, but there's just, in this day and age, there's so many more possibilities. Again, we didn't even have some of those 5-6 years ago when we initially started this whole thing. So I see it more as a opportunistic path where Danny and we're going to build. We're always building, and if whatever catches on, we're probably going to gravitate more toward making completion of that project or that part of it, and then helping that build us further. So everything is a step until we get to a coup de grace, however that comes.
Yeah, you took the words out of my mouth.
It was like, I'm Ursula and you're Ariel, and you were all like, oh my God, my seashells! Sing!
Oh, sweet Jesus. But yeah, At some point in time, we got to get you on the Chop Shop, dude. There's only so much wrestling I can talk about every week. So
You know what I really wanted to do? I really wanted to do a funny like radio show version of Macho Man reading children's stories. And then he has like special guests, So like one idea I had, this is great too, because like maybe there's room for this on the Chop Shop. I don't know, but it's like Macho Man's children's stories, whatever cool title we come up with, but like Macho Man Savage Children's Stories. And he's like, Jake and Jill went up a hill to fetch a pail of water. Yeah. I remember one time I got a pail of water poured all over me. Yeah, dig it.
Damn you, Hulk Hogan.
Right. He's like, Hulk Hogan, you're a liar. You said you were my brother, but that was a lie. And then like Hulk Hogan comes in, he's like, feel the 24-inch pythons, brother, as I tell this lie. I loved you, Macho Man, like a brother, but Elizabeth. Oh, and he's like, we're telling a children's story. He's like, oh, I'm sorry. And then he's all like, Jack and Jill went up a hill. And then just goes, just
I'll think of something. But yeah, it's perfect.
There's a lot of things in the works anyway for Dark Charm, because being media, Danny and I also, just let's give them a couple of small projects we're kind of working on,
okay,
just to kind of enlighten the folk.
Okay. So far, like right now, like as of recently, I've been working on a sort of fairy tale anthology. The first one I've started working on right now is actually called Jackie O. It's about a pumpkin, a jack-o'-lantern that comes to life to a child who's been stricken with cancer. It's not all of these stories are going to be like happy endings. Like this one especially is going to be sort of kind of sad, but in a way it'll be the same vein as like very hopeful. But these stories are not they're not as like vulgar as some of the other stuff I do. This is kind of tamed back on a lot of different things, because in case at one point in time it's like a young adult story book or something like that. So that's one, but I plan on doing it one for each, like either major holiday or one for like also like major characters like the Tooth Fairy and the Boogeyman and Santa Claus and like all these different types of characters. So the next.
That's gonna be. I said I'm excited for that because it's gonna be kind of like our Goosebumps, if you will, of like Dark Charm.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yep. So other than that, like I'm still finishing up a lot of other different storylines. I've been on a very huge short story kick for this year. Producing a lot of different diverse titles, and even started going back to visit a lot of all my other classic material, like Fascination Street, and I'm visiting the sequel to Unforgettable Fire, which a lot of like I started to think about a lot of the different titles I had and was like, you know what, some of these are really good if they were put together with something else. And that's what I sort of did with Night Child and Branded by Blood. Originally in the comic series, they were supposed to have been a crossover anyway. So what I did was I was just like, and I was surprised how well they melded together. So that eventually, after Unforgettable Fire gets finished, I'm going to put that out to get some stuff done for that, and then finish the second Unforgettable Fire, whatever comes to me when it comes to writing. Because like I said, I can't stop. It's not the matter of I want to stop. It's whenever I get an idea, I have to flush it out. Like how you do things for a visual effect, I have to do it in a literary effect.
Right.
But it works well to paint the picture for the person who's either reading or watching our material. So,
And that's what, part of the process is, so people understand it. And some of the reason why, again, there's, pardon me, been somewhat of a hiatus. Again, like Danny mentioned earlier, I had left for a little bit because I just had to get some things straight, and then I started doing these other projects. But in terms of the Oh Yeah Dig It podcast show moving forward, Danny and I are going to be your hosts.
yeah.
We're going to be touching upon movies, music, books, both novels, comic books, whatever, anything that's hit the pop culture scene at any point in time. In the original format, I kind of just stayed on 80s and 90s because those were my formative years. But Danny has a penchant for liking like 70s stuff. I like some of it too. So we're not gonna like have like a time frame so much as anymore as if it's like pop culture and it relates to us in some fashion, whether we saw it, we liked it, we love it, whatever, and we want to talk about it, we will.
Yep, we will.
You're gonna start seeing more of a social media presence for the show and for Dark Charm Media. We're probably going to communicate with our fan base through hashtags because we want to kind of make the hashtags go viral. Because, in all honesty, I've discovered in some of my social media research that hashtags help bring the exposure to something. Yeah. And so you get to kind of cheat in a way because you could be like, oh, yeah, dark, hashtag charm, hashtag media. So anybody who has Dark Charm Media in any kind of written format of a hashtag in any of their posts, they're going to be alerted to that. May bring more followers. I'm looking into more doing more diverse things as well on the visual side. Everybody's probably heard of TikTok by now. I'm working on TikTok for my art stuff. I posted a couple things on my personal page on Facebook and Instagram from TikTok, but I'm trying to find ways that I can take our characters and like introduce them in like an artistic way on TikTok, so that way people have like kind of somewhat of a visual with some editing and cool little effects, because it's different. And again, it helps bring more exposure to the product. We are just trying to build something, and we're if the shoe fits, we're inviting anybody to try it on with us. If that's an analogy I can give. We're still in a building process. We still want to invite people. We've kind of always had the mindset that in terms of money, obviously a percentage has to go back into the business so we can build it structurally, but also there's ownership and percentage back to the people working on it. So kind of a disclaimer, kind of a, hey, classified, anybody listening who might want to try to get some work out there, talk to us.
We'd be the perfect place for some exposure for you.
That's right.
All right, my man. Well, I think we probably had all. Let's see here. What would be one? We sort of did. Our next, yeah, I know. What would be our next topic? Honest to God, I've been really, really hell bent on talking about some John Hughes movies.
Are we going there?
I think we should go there next week. I mean, next one. I really do. I think we should go there.
We're going to John Hughes. All right. No, we are. That's it. John Hughes it is.
Yeah, man.
Listen, people, we don't have a time frame. We don't have a time frame. We'll say within the next week or two, you're going to get episode 2 of the Oh Yeah Dig It podcast show. John Hughes and his canon,
Yeah.
What
we'll also do is on the Dark Charm page, in regards to Oh Yeah Dig It, we're going to put up a poll. What is your favorite John Hughes movie? It might be. We might have the same thoughts in the process in regards to what your favorites are. So, peeps, just keep an eye on us. We'll do what we.
I'm going to let everybody know right now. We're probably going to talk a lot about The Breakfast Club and Uncle Buck between Danny and I. So.
Yep, probably a combination of those two. Yeah. Planes, Trains, and Automobiles was also one of my big favorites.
Man,
so, yeah, there's going to be a lot of John Hughes talk.
The stuff that he was attached to that he wasn't like necessarily the writer or director, but still a part of the product.
Yeah.
So we're excited if you joined us tonight. We ask you come and join us some more.
Yep.
And we'll reach us at our social media, Dark Chart Media on Facebook.
Or you can Dig It Podcast on Facebook.
Oh, yeah, Dig It Podcast show on Facebook. And we'll have more of a social media presence on other formats, and we'll let that out to you guys as we keep growing. Thanks for listening. And with that, good night.
Peace out.
Boop.